Chris Walmuth's multimedia classes, which are replacement classes.
And there's the switch.
There's a slider switch also.
Yeah,
If the light's on,
the light's not on.
okay.
Not the other one. The other one.
Yeah, it's flashing red.
Okay, and not
Hello?
Oh yes.
Okay. The multimedia classes were actually last built in 2005. And no one was able to get them built. I don't know how much effort was put into that particular thing by anybody else. But I did get them built and fixed a couple of things within them. For any of you who used the old TiMidity plugin back on OS2 before Ecom Station, will probably remember that double-clicking on a MIDI at some point resulted in just a wonderful PM shell reboot. So I also have managed to get that fixed. Oops. Okay, so this is a little bit about how I got the build. It turns out that you can only build it with one thing, and that's Visual Age 3.08. It's because it has a feature called Direct to SOM, which compiles part of the SOM stuff. Now that was taken out of Visual Age in 3.65, so that was the first problem, is you had to figure out that there was only one compiler that you could use to build this. It actually was built with EMX for its executable files, the players themselves. Just to be more straightforward, I now have them all built with VAC, so it's all VAC stuff. You also need to have the SOM compiler, the SOM toolkit installed, and there's a version on Hobbs, and you don't want the SOM 3, you want the SOM 2.11. It's also on ECS Disk 2, if you happen to have that.
Does that come with the Visual Age compiler, or is it separate thing?
It's separate. It's separate. You need kbuild make. Again, this was sort of seemed like an odd choice, but that was what it was originally built with. You also need the toolkit and LX Lite. Okay, then you have to generate the header files. These are basically the bindings to the C++ code, or the C code. They're found in SOM bin, which is under the toolkit. And it's really quite easy to build them. You just need to set the SOM base, which is just a normal set command, and then you, which you can actually edit. There's a somenvironment.com that sets everything up for it. And you also need to build the work shell file, HH files. There is a somhh.cmd in the bin directory. If you run that in the include directory, it generates it for you. So it's really quite straightforward. I lazily copied the workplace shell workplace shell IDL files into the SOM include directory so that it would generate those too. But you do have to generate those separately because they're actually in the IDL directory of the toolkit. Then there's, in the build directory, there's a local environment.com.tpl, and you just need to go in and set the various paths and things in there. And then rename it to the CMD and runenvironment.com. You need to review, make, include, which has a couple of things that will be unique to your setup, and then just run make, and it all builds. And it actually did finally all build. Took a while to figure out all those other little pieces so you had to keep, that it kept complaining about not having. Okay, issues still exist. Ice cache streams don't play. No idea. I think that it just never was completely implemented. There's a collection of bug reports on that site that's listed there. 5 or 6 of them are fit and finish, things like dialogues not quite fitting and stuff like that. Those are actually mostly all fixed. And CD digital audio is now supported. It was 1 line of code. And support for modern video formats has also been included. It's a hack, basically. All it does is the multimedia classes will call either FFmpeg or mplayer or smplayer. When it gets one of those, it just pass the file to it. So it's not really anything that's built into MMOS2. And there is that you can actually turn off if you have it set up some other way. There's an any setting that will allow you to just have it not do that. And that way you can still use whatever you want. And you can actually use whatever you want through this because you can put any executable in. There's a any setting for that. TiMidity MCD, that's a typo, is working again. Stack Overflow. That of course wouldn't generate a trap, so it was really a space adventure to figure out what it was. And there was on Hobbs Rex configuration file to set up the INIs. I grabbed it and rewrote it to make it a little prettier, so there's also now a configuration tool for the INI settings. Here are the INI settings. You've got a lot of choices here. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of different players you can set. The M3U player, M3U is just an object that is a list of files to play. So you can have it separate from the other players use. And the MVid player, that's simply the modern video player. That's going to be your M player or whatever your choice is. One note on that, well, I'll get to that later. It's on another slide. And the editors are self-explanatory, and all of those just take full paths. Or you can just use the exe name if the file is in the path. The UI things, most of these are just have it load faster, or to show you different things. There's a shadow of the media folder template that's in the multimedia folder. If you don't want that, you can set the last one to 1. If you don't want it to blink when playing, you can turn that off. If you don't want extended titles on CDs, which extended icon titles, you can turn that off. The other drive scanning things are when this starts up, it goes out and scans drives for the various medias and stuff like that. So if you have a huge number of media on something, it might take forever. So this is just, you can just exclude that drive from the scan. And CDs are automatically excluded, but you can reverse that in that setting also. The last one is just the no modern video. If you have some other setup where you don't want MMOS2 claiming, you know, all of your different media files. Then TiMidity. Oh, one other thing. The only audio player that will play MIDIs that I've found, none of the ones in here and not IBM's, even with the plug-in in, none of them will play it. Only FM2 Play will play it. And I have no idea why.
TiMidity player will play.
Oh no, I'm talking about using the plugin in MMOS2
Oh, right.
because that's what I'm talking about here. Yeah, but TiMidity of course will play,
Yeah.
but the TiMidtyMCD tools, again, this was an interesting thing. It was originally built with EMX, and it just kept endlessly complaining. I tried to build it with EMX, and it kept endlessly complaining. And it would get out, and it wouldn't be able to find drivers. It couldn't create a log file, all kinds of strange things. So I finally gave up and built it with GCC, which built pretty much straight out of the box. And a couple of other utilities that you needed, and just the pretty much standard libraries, except there's one, the EMX developer kit, because this uses OS2ME.A as a library, and that's in the EMX stuff. There is that little dark blue is linked to, on a hobs, just the EMX piece that you need. You just run configure like you normally would. Don't run automake unless you want to have to rebuild your make files. And then there's a CMD and MCD. CMD, again, you'll need to edit it for paths to fit your thing. And user include has to come before toolkit H, otherwise you end up getting the wrong OS2H for setting it up. And then you run make, and then you can build an installer from Warpin. Okay, TiMidity did cause that desktop restart, and like I said, it was a real space adventure for Steve and I to figure out what was going on. Because initially there was a divide by zero in it that we found, but fixing that didn't do any good. May not have ever been getting to it. Well, the truth is, the first problem was it couldn't find its configuration file. But that was relatively easy to fix. Just, I put in an environmental variable and had it go out and look at it. Finally, we got a trap dump, and the trap dump was in some help library assist. But Steve finally managed to dig through it, enough of it to find that there was a stack overflow in TiMidity. And that was, after that, worked perfectly. And so I'm pretty sure it's always been the stack overflow that caused it to fail. Installing it is now really straightforward. The Warpin, you just run it. It calls the multimedia installer, does that entire install off of the response file that's in there. You then do have to reboot, and definitely don't open the multimedia setup until after you reboot, so that it'll get recreated properly. And then you have to go in, open the tab, mark it as the default sequencer, restart workplace shell, and at that point it should simply work. Oh, one other word. Don't worry about the fact that when you go back in, that box isn't checked to make it the default sequencer. It's a bug that I'm going to have to figure out. It's somewhere in the multimedia classes where that doesn't get read back out of the ini file and rechecked. And then if you can't see well enough to do it that way, if you come out, double click on a MIDI file, you actually get it to play. And those are the files you've had in that sound folder forever that you got to stare at and wonder why they were there since they wouldn't
Yep.
do anything.
Yep.
I can remember when they used to play.
And well, they used to play from hardware.
Yeah.
That was really how they used to play. And I'd like to thank Lars, who's the one who gave me that one line of code to get the digital audio to work. And also Steve, and also Alex, because I, let's say, borrowed his whiz. And it obviously made some modifications to it, but. Any questions? Yeah.
I'd like to add one thank you to this because
Okay.
we owe one other person again a ton of gratitude. I mean, I think that the original MMO subclasses are what they are. These we have the sources from. And what a lot of
Yeah.
people don't know
Chris
is
should
that
be on here.
Chris, of course. Sadly, Chris left the platform because of various reasons. The Flame Wars, we remember some of those sad discussions. But the point was, the sources were kept behind closed doors by Adrian because Chris didn't want to release them. And in 2011, I talked to Adrian and said, you know, can we get them? And Adrian then, after a lot of back and forth, got in touch with Chris and he finally gave the green light to get the sources. And they were still on the NetLab server in zip. And that eventually in 2011 got distributed to Steve and he checked it into SVN. So this was just another example of a bit of source code that almost was lost for the community, but thanks to Adrian and running after Chris asking for permission to receive it, we now have it at least. So Adrian can be added to it, and Chris of course as well, because I think I understand, he told me once how much time he had to spend rebooting his machine all day because the workplace shell crashed debugging these things. So those are two you can add to the contributor list, and of course you, thank you.
Anything else?
You know, you've built essentially, you know, the classes here, and I'm just still on the dark a little bit about what is the process. You know, you talk about the .hh files and the .idl files, and I think the .idl files are sort of the interface, but
Well, the .idl files are what generate the .hh files. The .hh, it's the way in which SOM gets linked to either C code or C++ code. It's bindings inherently. And there are a bunch of those, and to tell you the truth, I don't know enough about SOM programming to actually probably answer your question.
okay, yeah, thanks.
Because, yeah, that would be a better question to ask Lars.
Just one thing, I really like your update because there are some old OS2 games that runs MIDI and runs MIDI from like the workplace shell or from the multimedia OS2, not from a different player.
Yes.
So now they will work. So it's very interesting. And does the binaries have been already released?
The binaries haven't been released. I'll put
Okay.
the MIDI drive. I'll put the MIDIs up on the MIDI driver up on Hobbs
Okay.
because it works real smoothly. I haven't yet figured out what I'm going to do with multimedia classes because I have an installer for them that works on ArcOS. I also have the old ECS installer, which
The installer is
I
pretty-
borrowed pieces of it out of the install package, but because they weren't the SVN. But the problem with the one for Arkanoa is because of the way that Arkanoa installs it, all I'm basically doing is copying the files over where they are in the thing. And so now I have a warp-in entry that if somebody uninstalls it, they completely break the multimedia classes with basically no way to repair it. Oops. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very delicate.
Just to run back in the archives, because I spent an awful lot of time with Chris working on the classes, and one of the biggest complaints that people had at the classes at the time was he did his best effort job to create an install script. This is kind of to answer Martin's question. I think only if you have the current CWMM classes installed and install on top of it, but any other derivative of that I would recommend against, because that's what caused most of the disruptions for people, their desktops trying to install it fresh, etc. So I would be very careful recommending people to just install these classes on top of something like a quick package.
That's why I'm reticent to release that
Yes.
installer. I did that installer for me because I had to keep replacing the classes.
I think that caused 80% of Chris's headaches and people complaining that it wasn't working because they tried to install it on top of a working system, and that seems to have caused a lot of trouble. So
Yeah. And at least the plan is for the updates to go into ArcOS at some point in time. So you will eventually be able to get them that way,
Yeah,
even
Yeah.
if I never become brave enough to release them. Or the other alternative is all the stuff's on the SVN. I've committed everything, so you can go out and build them yourself.
And
sure.
And then see if you can figure out where all the pieces go. That was a space adventure.
Now, what you didn't mention, Greg, was the localization.
It's all fixed.
Yeah, it's all fixed now.
Yeah, I've got 6 languages, I think. I'd have to look at this.
Something like that.
German, Spanish,
Italian, French,
Italian, French,
Dutch,
Russian.
Russian.
I don't know that I have Dutch for the multimedia
Do we not have
classes.
Dutch? Maybe not.
Well,
There's Russian, there's,
no, Dutch was created.
well,
This is
I-
what
let me-
we have the sources for.
that's what I thought.
maybe it didn't get into the SVN. Or maybe I just don't remember right.
And didn't we have one double byte character set? Was it traditional Chinese?
Let's see I'll see what I have.
you removed the sponsor from.
Yeah, exactly.
Those two sponsored by Pepsi.
Remove the sponsor from.
Not Coke.
Now how we going to make money?
Speaking of which, wild cherry Pepsi, diet wild cherry Pepsi is the best. So I highly recommend it.
Let's agree to disagree.
Okay. German, English,
Okay.
Spanish, French, Dutch, Italian, Russian, and Taiwan.
Taiwan, so it was
Taiwan,
traditional Chinese.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought. I thought we had one double byte character set in there. That,
Yeah, I don't know that it's building.
I'm not sure if
I don't know.
you don't know if you haven't tested.
Well, I haven't tested any of the languages. I can see that some of them build.
Okay.
So I'm sure they work. It's just a question of,
Yeah.
what they look like. I wouldn't have any idea.
Just one curiosity there. You talk about the direct to some that was on the old Visual Age and all Visual Age is old, but in the older Visual Age and in the newer was removed. Do you have any opinion?
Well,
Direct to some is good, it's bad, it's like.
The truth is,
Yeah.
I could build this with Open Watcom.
Okay.
The problem would be is I'd have to go back and figure out how to manually do all the pieces that
Okay.
VAC 308 does. It's not a true statement that you can only build it with 308. It just would be a senseless waste to go to all the effort you'd have to do to rewrite it all and to get everything in the right place and everything like that.
But do you have any hint why IBM removed that from our?
It was experimental.
Okay.
It was, and I think that it probably got removed around the time that SOM sort of started falling out of favor
Yeah.
as a route to do everything.
Okay.
But I don't know specifically
Yeah, I
for
know.
sure, but that's the most likely.
It's as reasonable an explanation as any.
Yeah.
If you look at Mac OS version 7 and look at the libraries in it, they match the OS2 SOM libraries file for file. So, you know, if IBM and Apple had quite a thing going with Intelligent, and
Yeah.
it was that SOM was at the heart of it. So when that project stopped, I think that was
Yeah, makes sense.
Except the one that you wonder is why would you bother to tear it out?
Yeah, there is that. Instead,
You know,
just
it's-
leave it, not update it, just
Yeah.
Yeah,
leave it as it
and-
was. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.